In 1961, psychiatrist R.D. Laing encountered a patient who terrified other doctors. The woman claimed she was dying and being born at the same time, experiencing what she described as reality dissolving and reforming. Her anxiety was extreme, her sleep patterns shattered, her relationships collapsing. Every colleague Laing consulted recommended immediate hospitalization and heavy medication. She was clearly having a psychotic break. But Laing saw something others missed. He recognized the symptoms not as mental illness, but as what he would later call ontological transformation, a fundamental shift in consciousness that mimicked crisis but was actually breakthrough. Instead of suppressing her experience, Laing supported it. Over 6 months, the woman's terror transformed into profound clarity. She emerged not broken, but awakened, with deeper self-understanding, greater empathy, and what she described as seeing through the masks everyone wears, including my own. Laing had witnessed something psychology was only beginning to understand. Consciousness doesn't just develop gradually. It can shift suddenly, violently, transforming your entire relationship with reality. And that shift, while it looks like breakdown to observers, is actually psychological awakening. What Laing discovered would revolutionize transpersonal psychology. There are distinct, measurable signs that consciousness is expanding, that you're experiencing not mental illness, but transformation. Modern neuroscience now confirms it. Spiritual and psychological awakenings activate specific brain regions, create identifiable shifts in neural networks, and follow predictable patterns. Dr. Andrew Newberg's neuroimaging studies show that during awakening experiences, the default mode network, your sense of separate self, decreases activity, while areas associated with unity consciousness and emotional intensity activate dramatically. This isn't mysticism, it's neurology. Your brain is literally reorganizing, dissolving old patterns of perception and creating new ones. And while that process is underway, you experience specific symptoms that most people misinterpret as problems. Anxiety that's actually heightened awareness. Fatigue that's actually energetic recalibration. Disconnection that's actually the beginning of deeper connection. Laing understood what few did. These aren't signs something's wrong. They're signs something's finally right. Your consciousness is breaking free from conditioned patterns and awakening to deeper truth. If you've ever felt like reality suddenly became more intense, more vivid, yet somehow less solid, if you've experienced periods where your old identity felt like a costume you could finally take off, if you've noticed that people and situations that once defined you now feel hollow or false, you're not losing your mind. You're experiencing what depth psychology calls psychological awakening, a fundamental shift in consciousness that research shows correlates with specific brain changes, emotional patterns, and perceptual shifts. This isn't spiritual bypassing or New Age fantasy. Recent studies document measurable changes during awakening experiences, altered activity in brain regions governing self-perception, emotional intensity, and reality processing. What most people don't realize is that psychological awakening follows identifiable patterns. Just as depression has diagnostic criteria, awakening has recognizable signs. But here's the challenge. These signs often feel negative: anxiety, fatigue, disconnection, crisis. That's why most people either suppress them through medication, distraction, or denial, or spiral into fear that they're breaking down. They're not. They're breaking through. Understanding the 5 core signs of psychological awakening doesn't just reduce fear. It allows you to work with the process instead of fighting it, accelerating transformation instead of aborting it. What you're about to discover are the signs rarely discussed outside transpersonal psychology, the markers that distinguish awakening from pathology, and the practices that help you navigate this terrifying, exhilarating shift in consciousness. Sign 1. The dissolution of false self, when your identity stops fitting. The first sign of psychological awakening is the most disorienting. Your identity, the story you've told yourself about who you are, suddenly feels false, constrictive, like clothing that doesn't fit anymore. Not gradually, suddenly. You look at your life, your relationships, your career, your personality, and experience a profound disconnect. This isn't me. I don't know who I am, but this definitely isn't it. This is what psychologists call ego dissolution, the loosening of your conditioned self-concept. And while it feels like identity crisis, it's actually identity liberation. Dr. Lisa Miller's research on awakening and consciousness shows that dissolution of false self correlates with decreased activity in the default mode network, the brain region that maintains your narrative self, your autobiographical identity. When this network quiets, the rigid boundaries of who you are soften. Suddenly, qualities you thought defined you feel arbitrary. Beliefs you thought were fundamental feel adopted. Relationships that felt essential feel performative. This isn't depression or dissociation. It's the beginning of seeing through social conditioning to your authentic nature beneath. Jung called it the death of the persona, the false self you constructed to win approval and survive socially. And like any death, it's terrifying. But unlike physical death, this one births something real. Laing documented case after case of people experiencing this dissolution. One patient, a successful lawyer, described it. I woke up one morning and everything I'd built my life around, career success, reputation, being the dependable one, felt like a costume I'd been wearing so long I'd forgotten it wasn't my skin. I had no idea who I was without it. This wasn't midlife crisis. It was consciousness recognizing the difference between authentic self and adapted self. Over months of therapeutic work, the lawyer didn't return to his old identity. He integrated it, recognizing which parts were genuine and which were performance. That integration is the goal. Not eliminating identity, but discerning what's real. Practice. When you feel your identity dissolving, resist the urge to cling or reconstruct it quickly. Instead, sit with the question, if I'm not who I thought I was, what remains? Journal daily. What feels authentic today versus what feels performative? This isn't about rejecting everything. It's about distinguishing persona from person. Over time, a truer identity emerges, not constructed from external demands, but revealed from within. But dissolution creates a vacuum, and the second sign reveals what fills it. Sign 2. The amplification of reality, when everything becomes unbearably vivid. The second sign is intense, often overwhelming. Reality becomes more vivid, more present, more intense. Colors brighter, sounds louder, emotions deeper. Not as enhancement, but as assault. Environments that used to feel neutral now feel energetically charged. Crowds become unbearable. Superficial conversations feel physically painful. You develop what seems like hypersensitivity to energy, stimuli, even others' emotional states. This isn't anxiety disorder. It's what neuroscientists call heightened perceptual salience. Your brain is processing reality with less filtering, and it's overwhelming. Research on altered states shows that during consciousness expansion, the thalamus, your brain's sensory gatekeeper, reduces filtering of incoming information. Normally, your brain filters 99% of sensory input to prevent overwhelm. During awakening, that filter loosens. You're experiencing reality more directly, with less conceptual buffering. Dr. Newberg's studies show increased activity in sensory processing regions during spiritual experiences, along with decreased activity in regions that normally create boundaries between self and environment. The result, reality feels more immediate, more intense, sometimes unbearably so. During his own psychological awakening, poet Rainer Maria Rilke described this amplification. Every angel is terrifying. Beauty is nothing but the beginning of terror we can barely endure. He wasn't being poetic. He was describing the experience of reality's overwhelming intensity when consciousness expands. Colors became so vivid they hurt. Music penetrated so deeply it felt unbearable. Even ordinary objects seemed to pulse with presence.
This wasn't hallucination, it was perception without the usual defensive filters. And it required learning to tolerate.
Intensity without shutting down. Contemporary accounts confirm this pattern. People report sudden inability to tolerate crowds, loud environments, or even certain types of media. What's happening? As your consciousness expands, you become aware of subtleties you'd previously filtered out. Energy dynamics in relationships, inauthenticity in conversations, even subtle dishonesty in yourself and others. This isn't paranoia, it's increased perceptual accuracy. But it requires developing tolerance for a level of awareness most people never experience. Practice. When reality feels overwhelming, practice conscious contraction, deliberately narrowing your focus. Instead of trying to process everything, focus on one sense at a time. 5 minutes of just listening. 5 minutes of just observing visual details. This trains your nervous system to handle intensity without shutting down completely. Also, honor your need for solitude, quiet environments, and nature. These aren't escapes, they're necessary spaces for nervous system recalibration. But amplified perception reveals something unsettling. The third sign shows what you now see clearly. Sign 3. The collapse of consensus reality, when normal feels like mass delusion. The third sign is the most socially isolating. You start seeing through what Jung called collective illusions, the shared agreements about reality that hold society together. Career success as life's purpose, material accumulation as security, social status as identity, busyness as virtue. These aren't just questioned intellectually, they're viscerally revealed as constructed, arbitrary, hollow. You feel like you've woken up in a world where everyone's sleepwalking, following scripts they don't recognize as scripts. This creates profound alienation. Am I crazy, or is everyone else living in a trance? Transpersonal psychology recognizes this as consensus trance disruption. Dr. Charles Tart's research on consciousness demonstrates that societies maintain shared reality through mutual agreement. What's real, what's valuable, what matters. During awakening, that agreement breaks down. You see through cultural conditioning to the arbitrary nature of shared beliefs. This isn't cynicism. It's what Buddhists call seeing the dreamlike nature of conventional reality. The problem? When you see through the illusion, you can't participate unconsciously anymore, and that creates a crisis. Everyone around you is still invested in the illusion. Laing observed this in patient after patient. One woman described attending a corporate event post-awakening. Everyone was performing their roles: the ambitious executive, the charming networker, the dedicated team player. And I could see that's all they were, performances. No one was actually present. They were all playing characters in a script no one wrote consciously. I felt like I was the only awake person in a room of sleepwalkers. This wasn't judgment, it was perception. She was seeing through social personas to the mechanical behavior beneath. The challenge? Maintaining relationships when you see what others can't. This collapse of consensus reality creates what existential philosophers call the burden of authenticity. Once you've seen through the illusion, you can't participate in it unconsciously. You either live authentically, risking social isolation, or pretend you still believe in the shared dream, risking internal fragmentation. Most people experiencing this sign feel profoundly alone, convinced no one understands what they're seeing. But awakening communities exist, people who've been through this collapse and learn to navigate reality with eyes open. Practice. Find others who've experienced this collapse. Online communities, spiritual psychology groups, depth psychology forums, places where seeing through consensus reality isn't pathologized but recognized. Also, practice dual citizenship, learning to function in consensus reality while no longer fully believing in it. This isn't hypocrisy, it's compassionate participation. You can play the social game while knowing it's a game. That awareness transforms obligation into choice. The collapse of illusion creates another challenge. The fourth sign reveals its emotional cost. Sign 4. The dark night passage, when meaning collapses before it reconstructs. The fourth sign is the most painful, a period of profound meaninglessness, depression, and existential despair that mystics call the dark night of the soul, and psychologists call existential crisis. Everything that used to matter feels hollow. Goals that motivated you feel pointless. Relationships that sustained you feel superficial. Even pleasures that used to work, food, entertainment, achievement, stop providing satisfaction. This isn't clinical depression, though it can coexist with it. It's the death of your old meaning-making system before a new one has formed. Research on consciousness transformation shows this passage is nearly universal. Dr. Steve Taylor's studies of spiritual awakening identify a common phase he calls the void, a period where old meanings have collapsed but new meanings haven't yet emerged. Neurologically, this correlates with disruption in brain regions associated with reward processing and goal-oriented behavior. Your brain's motivational systems, which previously oriented around externally derived goals, are reorganizing around internally derived meaning. During that reorganization, nothing feels meaningful because your meaning-making mechanism is offline. St. John of the Cross described this passage in the 16th century. The soul feels as if placed in a devastating solitude. It seems to it that the whole world is against it. He wasn't describing punishment. He was describing the necessary dissolution of ego-based meaning before soul-based meaning can emerge. Jung experienced it after his break with Freud, describing years where I was utterly alone. I did not know what I was doing, where I was going. I could only let things take their course. This wasn't failure. It was the gestation period before his most profound work emerged. Contemporary accounts match this pattern. People describe periods of months or even years where they function but feel internally dead, going through motions without genuine motivation. They often fear they're permanently broken. They're not. They're in the chrysalis stage. But here's the challenge. Western psychology pathologizes this passage instead of supporting it. The response is medication and cognitive restructuring designed to restore old meaning systems, but that aborts the transformation. What's needed is supporting the passage through meaninglessness until new meaning organically emerges. Practice. If you're in dark night passage, resist the pressure to fix it quickly. Create rituals of minimal care. Daily walks, simple meals, basic hygiene. Don't try to force meaning. Trust that it will emerge when the transformation completes. Journal your experience not to analyze, but to witness. This is the phase I'm in. It won't last forever. Connect with others who've survived this passage. Their existence proves emergence is possible. And most importantly, don't make major life decisions during this phase. Wait until meaning returns. Then evaluate what changes are genuinely needed. The dark night feels interminable, but the fifth sign reveals what emerges on the other side. Sign 5, the spontaneous knowing, when truth arrives without thought. The fifth sign is the most profound. You begin experiencing direct knowing, insights, understanding, truths that arise without logical derivation, as if downloaded from a source beyond your conscious mind. This isn't wishful thinking or imagination. It's what William James called noetic quality, knowledge that feels more certain than anything derived through reasoning. You suddenly understand relationship dynamics you couldn't see before. You perceive others' motivations with startling accuracy. You recognize patterns in your life that were previously invisible. And these insights prove accurate when tested against reality. Neuroscience research on insight and intuition shows that during awakening experiences, there's increased connectivity between brain hemispheres and between cortical regions and deeper subcortical structures. This creates access to information processed unconsciously, pattern recognition, emotional data, subtle perceptions that normally don't reach awareness. What feels like external knowing is actually integration of previously disconnected information. Your conscious mind is accessing the 95% of processing that normally happens below awareness. The result feels miraculous, but is actually neurological integration.
Carl Jung's most productive periods
followed his confrontation with the unconscious, where he experienced this spontaneous knowing intensely. Concepts like archetypes, the collective unconscious, synchronicity, these didn't come through logical analysis. They arrived as insights, fully formed, which Jung then spent years articulating and testing. He described it as information from the unconscious suddenly becoming conscious. Not mystical reception, but internal integration presenting itself to awareness. Modern accounts describe the same phenomenon. People suddenly understand why they've repeated certain relationship patterns. They perceive dynamics in their families they'd never consciously recognized. They make career decisions based on knowing that defies logic but proves correct. This isn't infallibility. Spontaneous knowing can be wrong when contaminated by wishful thinking. But there's a quality to genuine knowing. It's accompanied by calm certainty, not emotional urgency. It feels like remembering something you always knew rather than learning something new. Practice. When you experience spontaneous knowing, test it. Don't act immediately on every intuition, but notice patterns. Keep a knowing log. Record insights and their outcomes. Over time, you'll recognize the difference between genuine intuitive knowing and ego-driven hoping. Trust develops through verification. Also, create space for knowing to emerge. Meditation, walking, quiet reflection. Spontaneous knowing rarely arrives during busyness. It needs stillness to surface. Integration, the awakening navigation protocol. You now recognize the 5 signs. But recognition alone doesn't complete transformation. The awakening navigation protocol provides systematic methods for working with these signs instead of being overwhelmed by them. Phase 1. Recognition without resistance. Weeks 1 to 2. When you notice awakening signs, resist the urge to suppress or fix them. Create a daily log. Which signs appeared, in what contexts, with what intensity. This builds awareness without judgment. You're observing, not controlling. Phase 2. Support structures. Weeks 3 to 4. Awakening is difficult to navigate alone. Find support. Therapists trained in transpersonal psychology, awakening communities, online or local, spiritual directors who understand the psychology of transformation. You need people who won't pathologize your experience. Phase 3. Conscious cooperation. Weeks 5 to 8. For each sign, develop specific practices. Identity dissolution. Daily journaling of what feels authentic versus performative. Reality amplification. Conscious contraction exercises, sensory focusing. Consensus reality collapse, dual citizenship practice, finding community. Dark night passage, minimal care rituals, trust building with others who've survived. Spontaneous knowing, intuition testing, stillness cultivation. Phase 4, integration and embodiment, weeks 9 to 12. As transformation progresses, focus on embodiment, bringing awakening into daily life. How does awakened awareness inform relationships, work, choices? You're not transcending life, you're living it more consciously. The warning: awakening can be misused. Don't use heightened awareness to judge others as asleep. Don't use spontaneous knowing to bypass responsibility. My intuition said, isn't excuse for avoiding difficult work. Don't use identity dissolution to escape commitments recklessly. Awakening increases responsibility, not decreases it. You're seeing more clearly. That means you must act more consciously. The promise: people who navigate awakening consciously don't just return to normal, they transform it. Relationships become more authentic. Work becomes more aligned with values. Decision-making becomes clearer. And most importantly, you develop unshakable knowing of your authentic self beneath conditioned personality. That knowing isn't comfortable. It demands you live truthfully. But it's real, and after years of living from false self, real feels like coming home. Return to 1961, to R.D. Laing and the woman others wanted to hospitalize.
After supporting her through 6 months of what looked like breakdown, Laing asked what the experience had taught her. She thought for a moment, then said, "I learned the difference between who I am and who I was pretending to be. And once you know that difference, you can't go back to pretending." That's the essence of psychological awakening, not gaining something new, but removing what was false, revealing what was always there beneath conditioning. You now possess what Laing understood and most conventional psychology misses. The signs that seem like crisis are often transformation. Identity dissolution isn't breakdown, it's breakthrough. Reality amplification isn't pathology, it's perception. Consensus reality collapse isn't paranoia, it's clarity. Dark night passage isn't permanent, it's transitional. Spontaneous knowing isn't delusion, it's integration. The question Laing would pose to you: will you recognize these signs as awakening and work with them consciously? Or will you pathologize them, suppress them, and abort the transformation trying to emerge? The choice isn't whether awakening happens. Consciousness expansion occurs when readiness meets crisis, often without permission. The choice is whether you navigate it consciously or unconsciously. Laing chose to support awakening rather than suppress it. His patients didn't just survive, they transformed. The same possibility exists for you. Not comfortable, not easy, but real. And after living from false self, from consensus trance, from conditioned identity, real is what your soul has been seeking all along. The 5 signs are appearing. Recognition has begun. The question now, are you ready to let the false self die so the real one can finally live?